Welcome to part 7 of the Ultimate Sunrise on the Reaping Deep Dive! I'm covering chapters 19 and 20, scouring each page for symbolism and connections to the rest of the Hunger Games book series, written by the smartest person I know, Suzanne Collins. I'm focusing on the books and not the film adaptations. They're different, it's fine. It's just this is English class, sort of. That's what I'm going for. There are no spoilers beyond the specific Sunrise on the Reaping chapters I'm discussing, so while I'm covering chapter 19, I don't reveal anything about chapter 20. However, since this is a prequel, everything from the other books is fair game. And significant elements of the plot of Sunrise are revealed in the trilogy, and I use that context in this analysis. There's a whole description of the 50th games in chapter 14 of Catching Fire, okay? Each chapter review is organized into 7 sections. There's the recap, character analysis, symbols and themes, lore and world building, possible foreshadowing, series connections, and notable quotes. If you'd like to watch or listen to this without any interruptions, the ad-free version is on my Patreon along with all of my long-form videos, and you can download them as podcasts. Last thing, my videos focus on the fictional world of Panem, but there are hungry people in the real world, and food banks could always use extra donations and volunteers, so please consider contributing to food pantries if you are able to do so, and I have some links below of where to donate. And with that, my buddies and sweethearts, let's dive in. Chapter 19, Recap. It's the wee hours of the 4th day in the arena, and the volcanic snow-capped mountain is erupting. Haymitch learned a tidbit about volcanoes in school, which is enough to connect the name to the dazzling bursts of lava, the cloud of ash flowing down the mountainside, enveloping everything in its path. He almost falls out of the tree he's in, but regains his grip, and he's struggling to cope with the toxic ash in the air. Most of the tributes were on the mountain, according to Ampert, and Haymitch wonders if he's the last tribute standing. He speculates about the nature of the volcano since it's manufactured by game makers, wondering if it has natural lava that sets things on fire, and if the water tank he blew up was meant to put out those fires. If so, he feels very guilty to have destroyed any hope for those who survived the eruption. Eventually, Haymitch climbs all the way down the tree, huddling on pine needles beneath it, and he fully puts his head inside his shirt, feeling hopeless and resigned. Thinking he's a lowly district kid with a big ego and his attempt to stop the games was pathetic. Turns out, I was built for implicit submission, head to toe, through and through, inside and out. What an idiot I am. You know what, Haymitch? Shush. That's not true. His mind wanders to Ampert, how there's not even a body to return to Beatty, although Beatty could be dead too. Inevitably, Haymitch starts tearing up. His bat scratch wounds burn and bleed. Tear-soaked, blood-soaked, misery-soaked, I lay on my side and curl myself around the base of the tree trunk. Curled up on the ground, in tears, and unable to move. I'm sure we've all been there. It's a low place to be. Haymitch starts thinking about this cherished memory of being with Lenore Dove in the cabin on the lake on her birthday last winter and singing The Raven to her. He doesn't want Lenore Dove to be haunted by his death, and he yells out as if to her, but also sort of the game makers, just let me go. In case it wasn't clear, Haymitch is really not okay right now. He starts pounding his head into the tree until he bleeds and then goes limp, waiting to die. Thinking, all yours, President Snow. He lays there in a haze, his head tucked inside his shirt for hours until the night is over. The ground has been humming ever since the arena force field came back to life, and Haymitch figures this is the hum of the arena's backup generator Beatty told him about. Then Haymitch thinks of Mags's goal to protect her district partner during her games, and he thinks about Maisley and the remaining newcomers who could use a hand. He resolves not to give up and see if he can't be of some tiny use to someone else. Throw himself in front of an attacking career. Bring a newcomer some food or water. And with that decided, he comes out of his shirt hidey hole and sees the volcanic ash is clear and sparkling, so that everything seems to be coated in a layer of rock candy. Like everything is preserved in ice. Haymitch crunches his way to the butterfly bush and sees the mutt portal is open, but still. No more sparks shoot from the trees, no baby deer rampage around, but there are some dead ones on the ground. Damage was done, for sure. This quote makes me think of the book/miniseries Station 11. The running quote was, "I remember damage." then escape. It's simple, but it haunts me. Anyways, Haymitch eats his final hard-boiled egg as a little sandwich. I'm glad we're done with those eggs. They gross me out, I'm sorry. Haymitch starts getting his things together, retrieving his hammock from the area Ampert died in, and his skeleton is gone. That spear he'd used to fight off the squirrels has disappeared, but he's able to find Ampert's axe and puts it in his belt so he can carry mementos of his allies with him. He also still has that spare explosive sunflower token. The idea of trying to escape the arena and try to break the generator takes shape in his head, and though it's a long shot, the truth is, what does Haymitch have to lose? Nothing, according to him. So Haymitch starts working out how he could do this with a knife, an axe, and a dream. He's thinking, WWBD, what would BD do? And that would be to get to the generator, which is at the top of the arena. He needs to keep going north to the arena wall, which could be made of cement or metal or some kind of force field for all he knows. A couple miles into his hike, it starts to rain, and the water is fresh, so he tries to collect some in his water jugs. The Catching Fire Games recap also mentioned the rainwater being safe to drink. I'm taking back what I said last episode about the unpoisoned water tank being plot armor. I forgot about the rainwater thing, and I'm genuinely furious with myself for that oversight. Moving on, Haymitch uses the rain to clean himself up a bit. The crystal ash dissolves in water, so after half an hour of rain, the forest is as fresh and pristine as the morning he entered it. When Haymitch reaches the end of the forest, there's a tall hedge that comes to a point like a V and stretches as far as the eye can see in both directions. On closer inspection, the plants appear to be some kind of holly, loaded with clusters of red berries and sporting prickly green leaves. And the berries have little black dots on their skins. The holly plants that Haymitch is familiar with are poisonous, so it fits that they're in this arena. There's a little opening in the hedge, and Haymitch squeezes in, finding a narrow path going about 10 feet in, then curves farther into the hedge, which appears to be quite deep. He follows this hedge maze path, becoming hopelessly lost, and starts to panic. It's bad. He's stuck in this spiky holiday hallucination for hours, sweating profusely, fearing mutts will appear and he'll die so very foolishly. Eventually, he falls to his knees and weighs his options. Give up, continue to bumble around, or try to hack his way through the hedge with the axe. The last seems to have the most potential, but there's something almost sinister about the hedge that stays his hand. Despite his fear, he decides to go for it anyway, but right when he gets up and reaches for the axe, one of those dove gray rabbits hop over. It darts away, Haymitch follows it, and in a couple minutes, he's out of the maze and back in the forest. Yay! But then, a sword blade whistles by his head, just catching the tip of his ear. It's the careers! Haymitch falls backward over a branch, so he's on the ground. A District 4 girl lunges at Haymitch with a trident. He deflects it and stabs her in the gut with his knife. Then he slices the hamstring of a District 4 boy. The line is, I encounter a leg and hamstring it, leaving her district partner writhing on the ground. Ew. It's news to me that hamstring can be used as a verb, meaning to deprive the use of a leg by cutting the leg tendons. Trying not to gag. Rose. Haymitch brings down the axe on the District 4 guy, cutting his neck open with a single adrenaline-fueled blow, and then faces Panache from 1, who wields a sword and shield. The boys circle each other. Panache has burns along his arms and legs, the cracked lips, the mad dog look in his eyes. Haymitch is scared and thinks about running away before Panache knocks the axe out of his hand, cutting him with the sword. Then he slams him with the shield, and Haymitch drops the knife. He thinks, gasping for breath, I back away, hands lifted with only my words to defend me. I'm just gonna read what he says. I love this dialogue. Whoa. Panache, think about this. Looks bad killing an unarmed man, especially me being from 12 and all. I mean, I got a 1 in training. Think about your image. You don't want to do something stupid. Calling back to how Caesar roasted Panache at his interview. And Panache is listening. Haymitch keeps talking. Listen, I know you're not a meathead. That chariot idea was brilliant. Sorry I swiped it. But you need to play this smart, am I right? Else it could affect your sponsor gifts. How you making out with those anyway? Me, I've been doing pretty well. Turns out some people love a loser, but everybody knows you're going to win. You always win. Come on, at least slide my knife over here so we can give the people a show. Panache isn't convinced, arguing they already fought and Haymitch lost. Panache draws back his sword, looking at Haymitch's throat. I brace myself for the blow, trying to look brave and defiant and proud, staring him down so hard he has to admit that even if he kills me, he hasn't defeated me. In my last moment, I need to see recognition of that. What I see instead is the surprise that transforms his face as the dart pierces his throat. End of chapter 19. It's just like the game's recap in Catching Fire. Haymitch has remarkable speed and has killed 2 when the 3rd disarms him. That career is about to slit his throat when a dart drops him to the ground. Maisie Donner steps out of the woods. Well, we haven't seen her yet, but we can assume. Finally, something sort of good is happening to Haymitch. It's just been one tragedy after another. I mean, the trilogy isn't smooth sailing either, but I still enjoy rereading it. Sunrise, it's just in a league of its own. It's a tough story to get through, but one thing that definitely isn't a struggle is finding the perfect holiday gift with aura frames. This is their Carver mat frame. I normally keep it on a side table. I don't hold it up. This, like all of their frames, are digital, so instead of having just one picture, you can upload unlimited free photos and videos. It's like an infinite scrapbook without having to go through the trouble of printing anything out and gluing it in. You just use the Aura app. You connect the frame to Wi-Fi and you can load it up with all of those photos sitting in your camera roll. What I love most about giving these as gifts is you can preload the frame before it ships out, so it's personal and customizable to whoever you're giving it to. I never thought I'd be able to give the same gift to my dad and my long distance bestie and have them both like it. Plus, you can invite people to upload to your frame like a shared album. You can't quite wrap togetherness, but you can frame it. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code BREAD at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code BREAD. This deal is exclusive to viewers and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the channel by mentioning me at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you, Aura Frames, for sponsoring. Now let's get back into it. Character analysis. Haymitch. Seeing his self-hatred become increasingly severe just breaks my heart. He lays into himself over and over. He's calling himself a stuck-up, self-centered, incompetent idiot. Nothing I've done is enough. Not true, Haymitch. His self-harming behavior here with banging his head on the tree was really intense. It was pretty jarring for me. I did not expect that. His lack of caution with the rainwater threw me a little. As soon as it started raining, he stuck out his tongue to check if it tasted clean or poisonous. What if it was poisonous, Haymitch? Or what if the poison was tasteless? He could have waited to see if an animal drank it or collected rainwater and waited for a bunny to offer it to. I get that he's more confident it's clean since he dealt with the unpoisoned water tank, but still, better safe than sorry. He's fine though, so ignore me, I guess. When Haymitch faces off with the careers, he says, nothing that happens in the next minute is premeditated, only reflexive. And he has some solid fighting instincts, which is good in this situation, obviously, but wow, that was a lot. Makes me think of what Dr. Gall said to Corio after he killed Bobbin. That's mankind in its natural state. Her outlook is twisted, but yeah, when people are forced into these life or death situations, whether it's kill or be killed, those fight, flight, or freeze instincts pop up. I love the way he stalls Panache by talking. It's very Peeta, and it also reminds me of the way Haymitch talked down Thread from flogging Katniss when she defended Gale. I also really admired Haymitch's courage when he thinks Panache is about to kill him. I love baby Haymitch so much. So worried about him. I don't have any new insights into Panache or the careers he was fighting, so I won't comment on them. I mean, Panache behaved as I expected him to. It's the Hunger Games, and he's a career, you know? Symbols and themes. Volcanoes. I'm wondering if this volcanic eruption is a subtle nod to the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in Pompeii in ancient Rome. This was a huge natural disaster that destroyed and buried the surrounding area in tons and tons of ash, and both of these volcanoes were believed to be regular, beautiful mountains before their sudden, deadly eruptions. For Mount Vesuvius, there were some minor earthquakes the days leading up to the eruption. I've linked my sources in the description. I'm not an expert on this at all. all, but Romans attributed natural disasters to the wrath of the gods, and Vulcan, the god of fire and metalworking, was believed to cause volcanic eruptions. We don't know exactly if the game makers deliberately set off the volcano after the water tank explosion, or if it went off due to complications from the explosion, but either way, the game makers had planned for this eruption to happen at some point. The game makers are the gods of the arena, and this eruption and the games as a whole are the wrath of the gods, so to speak. Obviously, there's plenty of famous volcanic disasters, but ancient Rome and the Hunger Games go hand in hand, so Pompeii seems significant. If you're well versed in the history of Pompeii and any related mythology, please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read it. Next is The Raven. New excerpts from the poem are in this chapter, and Haymitch is beginning to hate this poem. Makes sense since he's relating to it more and more. This is the passage. "Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore." It's the second verse of the poem. I went back and tried to find all of the excerpts we've gotten so far in Sunrise. I highlighted them here and put the chapters they were in for reference. I'm pretty sure I found them all. I wish I had thought to do this from the start. Anyways, to sum up the meaning of this passage in the chapter, the narrator is desperately waiting for the night to end, tries to distract himself with books, and aches for his lost Lenore. Haymitch is thinking of Lenore Dove in the narrator role here. Nameless here in this world, dead and gone as I am about to be. Will I be her lost one forevermore? Will she be haunted by me for the rest of her life? Ow, Haymitch. Hard candy. We have this rock candy looking ash residue in this chapter, and in chapter 18, the rainbow bat's wings were described as shining like the hard candy in the Donner's shop window on a sunny day. The rock candy ash coating also was described as sunlight bounces off the crystals, throwing tiny rainbows around the forest. So both of these descriptions of game maker horrors are ironically tied to candy, sunshine, and rainbows. The sinister wonderland, twisted beauty of the arena. In the trilogy, Katniss described the colorful Capitol buildings as looking like the flat round discs of hard candy her family can never afford to buy at the tiny sweet shop in District 12. By her era, it seems that a new family took over the Donner shop since Maisie died in the games and Marilee is married to Mayor Undersea and doesn't work, and their daughter Madge does not work at the candy shop, so someone else runs it. Katniss uses this candy descriptor for Capitol architecture several times. The sun set over the artificial candy Capitol and piles of rainbow glass that's been blown off the exteriors of the candy-colored buildings. So symbolically, when candy is described as hard in the series, it's associated with the sinister, inflexible, unforgiving nature of the Capitol, compared to soft candy like Lenore Dove's favorite rainbow gumdrops and young Sejanus's bag of gumdrops he held on the playground. These rebellious, free-thinking district kids believed things could change, that the hardened world could be molded into something new. I have a video from a while back all about candy symbolism in the series. I'll link it here if you'd like to see. Warning, it does contain spoilers for the rest of Sunrise. Dove Gray Rabbits. This interaction with the rabbit this chapter aligns with everything we already discussed about them. They help Haymitch and warn him of danger. This one led him out of the maze, which was good, but also bad since the careers were there, much like Alice following the White Rabbit through the maze of Wonderland. In the Disney animated version, she does go in a hedge maze towards the end of the movie, though she's running from the queen and all that. She's not chasing the rabbit. Moving on to the maze. We can't talk about the maze shenanigans without talking about the ancient myth of Theseus and the Minotaur. Suzanne Collins herself has said this myth influenced the Hunger Games as a whole. I linked an interview where she discusses it in the description. It's very long, it's a cool interview. The gist of this myth is the king of Crete's son died in Athens, so he decides to punish Athens by demanding that they send 7 young men and 7 young women to Crete every 9 years to be sacrificed to the Minotaur, a monstrous creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull who lived within a vast, intricate maze called the Labyrinth. Theseus was an Athenian prince, and he wanted this all to stop, so he volunteered as tribute to be one of the guys sent get to the labyrinth, with the goal to kill the Minotaur once and for all. A romance popped up between the King of Crete's daughter and Theseus before he went in the maze, and she gave him a sword and a ball of string so he could slay the beast and find his way out. And it worked. He and the other people made it out alive and sailed back home. Theseus had told his father, the king, that he'd change the ship's black sails to white if he beat the Minotaur, but he forgot to do that. So the king saw the black sails coming in, and devastated, he jumped off the cliff into the sea and died. In Suzanne's interview, she said, "The connection to the myth of Theseus happened immediately. And in variations of this myth, sometimes the labyrinth's a maze, sometimes it's an arena. So the whole setup of the Hunger Games has clear ties to this myth." I found an excellent YouTube video about this and other Greek and Roman mythology ties to the Hunger Games by Emma Book Talks. I linked her video in the description. I highly recommend watching it. It was super interesting. All this to say, with this hedge maze in the 50th Games arena, we have a labyrinth within a labyrinth. The Minotaur is the capital as a whole. Haymitch entered the arena labyrinth and had the goal to break it to put a stop to the capital games. The bomb flood thing doesn't work, and then he enters the double labyrinth, the hedge maze, with this same goal to bring down the Minotaur, aka the capital. If Suzanne thinks of Katniss as the triumphant Theseus of the story, then I see Haymitch having this double labyrinth helping explain why he and the rebels didn't pull off breaking the arena this time around. The rebellion happens in stages, chipping away at the various barricades protecting this capital regime. Haymitch was working to clear away that extra arena labyrinth thematically. I hope that made sense. On to lore and world building. District 12 education. Another tidbit about the curriculum in 12 is that they learn about various types of mountains, but predominantly the ones that cover the seams of coal they mine. So they study some geology. Next is New Year's traditions. So aside from having cake, people use holly to decorate. It's not described as being formed into wreaths or anything specific. Since this is Panem, I looked up if ancient Romans involved holly in any traditions, and they did. They celebrated Saturnalia, which was before the winter solstice, honoring Saturn, the god of agriculture, abundance, and renewal. Wreaths and boughs of holly appeared everywhere, indoors and out, when presents were exchanged. A little holly sprig was tied to each gift. This celebration wasn't on what we consider New Year's, but it fits. And earlier in this book, a Saturnalia celebration was mentioned by Proserpina. When she was talking up Effie, she said she was the president of the Capital Cohorts chapter and basically created the spring Saturnalia her freshman year. A spring Saturnalia wouldn't be a winter solstice, but maybe they did it around spring solstice. As Christianity gained prominence in the Roman Empire, Saturnalia celebrations morphed into what we know as Christmas, and they kept the use of holly. Landmines. Backtracking a bit here to talk about whether or not there were landmines around the platform at the start of the 50th Games like we see in Katniss's era. Since we have this whole bombing plot in the 50th Games, why did the rebels opt for smuggling in explosives instead of digging up landmines like we saw District 3 do in the 74th Games to protect the career's cornucopia supplies? Were there simply no explosives like that in the second quarter quell? Or did the rebels feel it would be too risky to overtly dig up the landmines to use for the water tank bomb? So to figure this out, I searched through Sunrise and I couldn't find anything concrete about there being landmines rigged up by the platforms. In the Hunger Games, Katniss narrated, 60 seconds. That's how long we're required to stand on our metal circles before the sound of a gong releases us. Step off before the minute is up and landmines blow your legs off. And after the gong starts, the mines are disabled. When they're active, the mines are set off by pressure. It doesn't have to be a lot either. One year, a girl dropped her token, a small wooden ball, while she was at her plate, and they literally had to scrape bits of her off the ground. So they're very sensitive, automated mines during Katniss's games. Not sure how that all worked in the 75th arena with the water. Maybe there were a form of naval mines like in Finding Nemo. I know they're real things. I first saw naval mines in that movie and that's what stuck. But what is the deal in the 50th Games? Right before Haymitch enters the arena, Effie tells him, "Remember, Haymitch, don't step off your plate for 60 seconds. So that rule is still in place, but there's no indication the consequence is an explosion. Haymitch doesn't have any explanatory thoughts as to what what happens if he steps off early. While the countdown is happening, a rabbit hops up to Haymitch's foot, which means it would have been in the pressure-activated zone that the 74th arena had. This indicates that if there is a landmine there, it is either not as sensitive as it is in later years, or possibly it's not automated at all and is manually set off by game makers if a tribute steps off the plate too early. Though since Haymitch doesn't bring up any landmines, I think there aren't any there. I bet the common practice in that era is to just shoot tributes if they step off the plate too early. I imagine there's weapons rigged up that can pop out of the ground, or they're in the nearby foliage and they'll shoot down any tribute that breaks this rule, sniper style or something. There had to have been an evolution to enforcing the 60-second countdown. In the 10th games, there's still the practice of placing all the tributes and then they wait for the gong to sound before they can move. As always, I'm going off the books here, not the movies. And in the ballad film, Lucky does a 10-second countdown, but we don't get that in the book. Lucky says, "Ladies and gentlemen, let the 10th Hunger Games begin." And the camera cuts to the tributes positioned in a large circle awaiting the opening gong. Then there's the horrific display with Marcus described, and Sejanus expresses his rage, and the moment he exited the hall, the gong sounded, and the tributes scattered. It doesn't sound like there was a regulated period of time between tributes taking their places and the gong sounding. They just have the rule that they need to wait for the gong. It isn't explicitly said, but since peacekeepers were stationed at the arena, I figure they were instructed to shoot any tribute who tried to get a head start before the gong. As the arenas grew in complexity, it makes sense that the process of enforcing these rules grew more sophisticated with hidden guns and landmines. I don't think game makers would use mutts for this sort of thing, since they'd want something more instantaneous. The lack of mines in these games are further supported by the Rebel bomb plan. When Beatty first brought it up with Haymitch, there's no discussion at all about existing explosives in the arena. Beatty just says, "Locate the tank and blow a hole in it." And Haymitch asks, "How am I supposed to blow a hole in the tank? Are you sending me in there with explosives?" If either of them had any knowledge about landmines, we would have seen that here, right? So what prompted the game makers to put in landmines instead of shooting down the tributes? Here's what I imagine happened. One year, a group of tributes made a plan to step off the platforms before the gong sounded as a way to subvert the games. They knew they'd die, but it would cause an upset to have the games begin with a bunch of tributes being shot down. It hammers in the point that the opening bloodbath is the Capitol's doing. Imagine if half the tributes were taken out before the gong sounded, like they agreed that one tribute would step off every 5 seconds of the countdown. It challenges the game maker's control to have tributes deliberately break the rules. It's like Katniss and Peeta with the berries. They're daring the Capitol to kill them with the consequence of disrupting their propagandized game. So I imagine a bunch of tributes did this head start plan, were shot down, the Capitol audience maybe thought it was interesting or found it annoying, and the game makers thought replacing bullets with landmines would be a bigger deterrent to future rebellious tributes. Having no body left to send home to their parents would dissuade a lot of people from purposely breaking this rule. What do you think? There's also been a lot of talk about this since the Sunrise teaser trailer came out. In it, Panache appears to take off his jacket, throw it on the ground when he's waiting on the platform, and there is no consequential explosion. If he did this in the book, it is not mentioned. And we're already seeing book-movie differences play out in this teaser since Haymitch is no longer having a head start after the gong sounds. Even if in movie canon there are landmines in the 50th games, they are not ruled by book canon laws. I love how I'm saying laws as if this is like an actual thing. It isn't a plot hole in the movie universe for a jacket not to set off mines because there is very little lore about them in the movies. Maybe in movie canon, they're not so pressure sensitive. But I think it makes the most sense in the Sunrise book and movie that there are no landmines around the platforms. So everybody relax about Panache's jacket and mentally prepare yourself for the Sunrise film to have many differences from the book. That's the way it goes with these adaptations. Possible foreshadowing. Haymitch winning. Obviously, we know from the trilogy, Haymitch is the victor of the games, and he has some thoughts that foreshadow this here. He thinks, am I it then? The last tribute left alive? The victor of the Quarter Quell? Not yet, but he will be. There's also possible foreshadowing of more explosions. Haymitch managed to hang on to this spare sunflower explosive necklace and thinks how it's too bad he doesn't have a blasting cap. The stuff isn't much good without it. It needs another explosion to set it off. Haymitch wonders what he would even try and explode since there's no chance he could get to the brain of the arena, and the only way to reach the generator would be to break out of the arena. So this could foreshadow another explosion happening and maybe Haymitch actually breaking out of there. The events of this chapter are overlapping now with what Katniss saw in the 50th Games recap. Haymitch seems bent on continuing in the same direction, away from the now volcanic mountain, but a maze of tightly woven hedges forces him to circle back into the center of the woods, where he encounters 3 of the careers and pulls his knife. And then Maisie comes to the rescue with her dart, though it isn't revealed it's her in this chapter of Sunrise. Later on in that recap, Haymitch says to Maisie that the arena can't go on forever, and thinks if he can find the end, maybe there's something they can use. And he ends up reaching the edge and figuring out things bounce off of the surrounding force field. There is obviously more to this story than Katniss saw in the recap. I mean, she mentioned nothing of Haymitch allying with Lulu or Ampert, so he could get up to all sorts of other shenanigans with this spare explosive. Series connections. Rue and Ampert. It never ends with these two. This was pointed out to me in a comment from ONDRIKB in the last video, but Katniss and Haymitch also gave their respective allies the same type of physical affection they had given to their siblings. Katniss poked Rue in the belly just like she would with Prim when talking about what they do with the career's food. She poked her and said, "Eat it," making her giggle. Right before Haymitch goes down the mud portal, he mussed Ampert's hair like he did with Sid's. But before Haymitch mussed Ampert's hair, he gave him his knife. And guess what he gave to Sid as they said their goodbyes and he was mussing his hair? He handed him his pocket knife. Does Suzanne just brainstorm how to make every moment as heart-wrenching as possible? She must, right? There's also another spear parallel. So Haymitch can't find the spear he'd had when fighting off the squirrel mutts and wonders if the game makers took it with Ampert's body. Rue was killed by a spear, and Katniss chooses to leave the spear in her stomach. Weapons and bodies will be transported to the hovercraft. She has no use for a spear, so the sooner it's gone from the arena, the better. So both of these spears were lifted out of the arena. Wow. Struggles with ash. Katniss's experience with the fire in the 74th arena lines up a bit to Haymitch's experience with the volcanic eruption. The ash makes him gag, and he almost falls out of the tree he's in. He pulls up his shirt collar to cover his face for a pocket of protection from the toxic air, plus it's fireproof. For Katniss, she awoke to the fire when she was up in a tree, though she got down from it without stumbling. She also pulls the top of her flammable shirt over her nose for a thin veil of protection from the ashy air. She still starts gagging though and eventually throws up a bunch. Piggybacking off of this, there's an intriguing wording link here when Haymitch describes the ash as having a scent so cloying he gags, and I searched cloying in the other books. It's a rare word. Katniss uses this word twice when describing flowers. The first time is in Catching Fire on the Victory Tour when Haymitch is leading Katniss and Peeta through the Justice Building of District 11 to talk privately, and in their getting ready type room, vases of blossoms give off a cloying scent that makes my eyes itch. Stay with me here. And the second time is the start of Mockingjay when Katniss finds a rose from snow in her house. Cloying and artificial. A dab of white peeks out of a vase of dried flowers on my dresser. I don't know if there's meant to be a connection between Sunrise and Trilogy here with this word choice, but if there is, maybe it's showing that these are scent triggers for Katniss and Haymitch. Katniss develops a huge aversion to the smell of roses, and it makes her gag and panic due to their association with President Snow. So perhaps for Haymitch, he develops a strong aversion to the smell of ash. And this moment with the volcano is the start of it. Interesting to think of Haymitch hating ash when he's mentoring the girl on fire and there's all the Fire of Rebellion stuff. His first time working with the rebels does go very wrong, so it kind of fits. Haymitch specifically says there is no smoke from the volcano, so that's why I keep saying ash, by the way. Stupor. When Haymitch is laying under the tree, he thinks, "No, I don't sleep, but I'm so exhausted by the night's exertions and the crushing weight of my despair that I achieve a sort of stupor." And I looked for that word in the other books. In Catching Fire, the morning after the Quell theme is announced and Katniss is at Haymitch's place, hungover, after Peeta says he dumped out all of the liquor in the house, this seems to jolt Haymitch out of his stupor, and he paws through the box in disbelief. So here Haymitch is described as being in a stupor brought on by drinking about another quarter Quell. Maybe that's something. Next is shirt hiding. I can't say this is a real connection, but This moment where daylight starts peeking in through Haymitch's shirt when he's hiding inside of it reminded me of the moment after Katniss finds out Peeta lost part of his leg at the post-games interview, and she hides in his shirt. In Sunrise, Haymitch thinks, but eventually a faint daylight shows through my shirt. I don't want to come out. So I don't. And here was Katniss's inner monologue. I'm afraid I might cry, and then I remember everyone in the country is watching me, so I just bury my face in Peeta's shirt. It takes them a couple of minutes to coax me back out, because it's better in the shirt, where no one can see me. I think about that moment way too often. I wish we got more vulnerable Katniss moments in the films. She's just a girl. Wallowing. Haymitch's whole thing here, curled up in despair, echoes Katniss's initial reaction to the Victor Quarterquell announcement. She ended up in the cellar of an empty house in Victor's village, stuffed the front of her shirt in her mouth to scream into, and eventually curls up on her side with a plastic tarp over her and goes into her own terrorized stupor. Later, when she goes to Haymitch's place to talk about the games, she thinks, while I was wallowing around on the floor of that cellar, thinking only of myself, Peeta was here, thinking only of me. Here in Sunrise, Haymitch thinks, I'm sick of wallowing in my failure. Enough. It's all over. And then he starts thinking about what Mag said about her district partner and decides to find Maisie and help her die with her head up. After they both had their wallowing, they thought about how to help their district partners. Also, this moment where Haymitch is looking at Panache, trying to get recognition in his eyes that he knows he hasn't defeated him, made me think of the execution of President Snow. When Katniss has her arrow aimed at him, she thinks, I search his eyes for the slightest sign of anything. Fear, remorse, anger, but there's only the same look of amusement that ended our last conversation. And then she goes rogue and shoots coin. I don't know, just this looking at your enemy in the eyes, trying to get them to really see you when you're trying to see into their eyes. And it's a subtle connection, but it made me think of that. And now for notable quotes. Here's Haymitch berating himself. The full force of my failure hits me. Who do I think I am? Why did I think I could change anything? That I could take on the Capitol with all its might and bring the Hunger Games to a standstill? Me, a 16-year-old kid from the trashiest district in Panem with little schooling and no outstanding skills. I've got nothing but a big mouth and an inflated sense of my own self-importance. All foam, no beer. That's me. Near beer. He's referencing a bunch of previous dialogue in the book. When he talked to Lenore Dove in the first chapter, she says how thinking things are inevitable, not believing change is possible, is part of the issue holding people back from stopping the games. He also uses Maisley's words. She said them to Drusilla after she beat her up on the train. You're nothing but a low-rent escort hanging on by your fingernails to the trashiest district in Panem. So good. Haymitch's remark of having no outstanding skills calls back to his private training session. The head game maker said, we haven't noticed that you possess any outstanding skills. And Haymitch's use of near beer is the nickname he came up with at Plutarch's. Near beer careers. We have some more depressing Haymitch thoughts. Lenore Dove said there's no guarantee the sun will rise, and I wish today proved her right. Nothing good awaits me. I'd rather hide in the dark. Really felt that one. There's also a somewhat helpful thought process from Haymitch. Doubt swamped me. You can't do it. It'll never work. You're just a loser with an axe trying to chop down the Capitol again. Have you really learned nothing? Maybe I haven't learned anything, and there's no chance of success, and I should double down on my implicit submission. But the truth is, what have I got to lose? Nothing. That's what. And I owe it to Ampert to try. And that is it for Chapter 19. Chapter 20. Recap. Moments after the dart pierced Panache's throat, he collapsed, dead. Maisie walks out into the open, holding a blowgun she attached to a makeshift necklace, and flatly states, we'd live longer with the two of us. Bam. I was going for a Maisie look with this hair, got the little braids. Haymitch and Maisie agree to be allies, though she threatens him a little, saying she has a dozen poison darts left if Haymitch is still feeling exclusive. There's 3 cannon booms confirming the deaths of Panache, Barba, and Angler. I keep almost saying Barbara, and when I hear Barba, I think of those Booba doll things. It was a TV show. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Booba. I never watched it. I just remember commercial. I was laughing about this for nearly a minute straight. I could not stop. This is it cut down and sped up a bunch. Booba possessed me. Back to the story. Maisley takes Barba's dagger, and Haymitch chooses to leave behind the trident and Panash's sword since he's creeped out by it since it killed newcomers. A hovercraft picks up the three bodies, and Maisley and Haymitch stop to tend to his wounds. One from deflecting the trident, one from Panash's sword. Maisley takes charge here. She has a first aid kit she got from a dead career, and she's pretty beat up herself at this point. Her shirt sleeves are cut off and there's burns on her arm, along with Drusilla's riding crop welts and a range of cuts and bruises. She tells Haymitch that the lava from the volcano wasn't actually hot. It was some sort of gel that gave you chemical burns if it got under your clothes, then turned hard and slippery as ice on the ground. Game makers are just sitting around brainstorming ways to give chemical burns to children? Freaks. Haymitch and Maisley assess their food supplies, and like the queen she is, Maisley had fashioned a fork out of wire, and she had a little knife. As a sweet surprise, he tells her to close her eyes while he takes out the goblet and fills it with the remaining grape juice. Haymitch wants to give it to her as a thank you for saving him, but Maisley insists they split it and all the food 50-50. Haymitch convinces her to keep the glass for her table setting, and they talk about what's going on. Maisley is aware the arena's on the blink, as in malfunctioning a bit, and wonders if they're the last tributes alive. And then they have this really touching exchange. Haymitch says if it comes down to just them two, he's on borrowed time anyway. Don't think twice about using those darts. Maisley challenges, you think I couldn't? Haymitch thinks about all the good things she's done since the reaping and says, I think you couldn't. For just a second, a look crosses her face. Young and vulnerable. Thanks for that. I don't think you could either. Aww, they trust each other! Then the Fallen Tribute recap plays, and they work together to keep track of who's gone and who's left. The losses of Day 4 are Panache, all 4 kids from District 2, all of District 3, Barba and Angler from 4, the remaining boy and girl from 5, Atreed from 6, a boy from 10, and Blossom from 11. There's 10 tributes left, with the only careers being Silka and Marit. Maisley does the heavy lifting of remembering who exactly is left. She's able to keep track based on the colors they wear. In the darkness, Haymitch has a moment of derealization. Nothing feels real, and he thinks, possibly I have died by poisoning, in the tunnel, on Panash's sword, and I have moved on to one of Lenore Dove's worlds, where I continue to dream of life. Then Maisley starts talking and says that she's the one who killed Loop from 1 and managed to get a dart at Camilla from 2, but she may have ultimately died from the chemical lava. A sponsor gift appears, and it's that bean and ham hock soup that District 12 makes when people have died. Mags had ordered it for them after Luella died, so she seems to have picked this soup out for them again, kind of honoring Lulu and Wyatt and just all of the loss. Knowing Mag sent this brings Haymitch back to the present. Tears fill my eyes, forcing me to admit my presence in the only world I know, not an imaginary one. The one where I am in the Hunger Games for real. Intense. They eat together, and Haymitch builds a fire to fight off the cold. When Maisley sees that Haymitch's token is a flint striker, she's impressed, and she says that she'll take first watch. Before Haymitch can fall asleep, though, he feels he needs to say something more to thank Maisley for earlier. What do you say to the meanest girl in town who's become your friend? No, more than a friend, really. A newcomer, being tributes and not killing each other, looking out for each other with no questions asked. That's family, I guess. This next part gets me. He says, you remember what Ampert said when you made his token? There's a long pause before she says, sure, I'll be your sister. Shut up. Ampert had said he wished she was his sister, and she said, I'll be your sister to him too. And it was too much then, and it's too much now. Then Haymitch and Maisley squeeze each other's hands, and he says, night, sis. I'm worried this will come off cheesy in the film if they include it. On the page, it's so tender and sweet, so I hope that comes across. Haymitch has a bunch of awful nightmares. Classic. Then Maisley wakes him up up and he takes over the watch. He tends to the fire until morning and tries to distract himself from hunger by figuring out a plan to get through the hedge. Then he tries to turn Maisely's tarp into a rainwater catcher, and it's not great. When Maisely wakes up, she laughs at him. She takes over and reworks it. Haymitch helps, and he breaks the hollow stem off the goblet to use as a tube, getting the water from the funnel into a jug. Once that's finished, Maisely suggests they go to the cornucopia to look for more food and look for the newcomers. Haymitch intends to go back to the hedge, so he suspiciously says he has a feeling about heading north instead. Maisely reluctantly agrees, and they scrounge around for the dead careers packs for food before heading off. Haymitch can tell Maisely knows he's up to something and is increasingly annoyed with him for his evasiveness. He considers telling her, but can't without being overheard. Their haul from going through the backpacks is another hammock, 2 empty water jugs, 3 handkerchiefs, a bottle of syrupy medicine for when you've been poisoned, a second tarp, a blowtorch, plus a tin of sardines, a banana, 4 rolls, and a bit of nut butter. By the way, this matches up with the 50th Games recap. In it, Maisely and Haymitch do better together, get more rest, work out a system to salvage more rainwater, fight as a team, and share the food from the dead tributes packs. Maisely assembles rolls with nut butter and banana, which Haymitch is surprised to find is delicious. She eats hers with a knife and fork, classic Maisely. After their meal, they head in the direction Haymitch thinks is north. He's not sure where they are at first, but gets his bearings when he finds that blueberry bush he hid under when he was poisoned. Maisely stops to collect some of the berries to mash up for her darts, and it's surprising to Haymitch that the darts didn't come poisoned. Leave it to Maisely to make them lethal. He's eager to get to the hedge, and he's impatient with her when she stops to restock her poison. She stores the liquid from the berries in a heart-shaped glass vial that hangs from one of her necklaces. It's an airtight perfume bottle. Maisely shares a bit more about what happened at the bloodbath. So Wyatt tried to shield Lulu, and she ran away after he died. Maisely tried to follow her, but lost her at the mountain. She feels guilty for not sticking with the newcomers, despite trying to. As they hike, they see more damaged parts of the arena. Trees that drip blood instead of sap, a gaping hole where something exploded, leaving a slimy clear liquid coating, a stump that belches sulfurous glowing gas, and dead foxmutts who appear to have died eating poisonous eggs. Feel a teeny bit vindicated about these harmful eggs. Finally, they reach the hedge maze, and Haymitch reveals his plan, which is to cut straight through it and take a gander at what's on the other side. Maisely is hesitant, and she thinks something's not right about this hedge. Haymitch reassures her, based on his experience, that the worst thing it can do is get them lost. They take their knives and daggers with them and go inside. On the count of 3, they slice through the hedge, but as soon as they do, dozens of the holly berries pop off their stems and swarm up their arms. They seem like regular ladybugs until they latch onto the flesh of their arms, and within seconds, they inflate to the size of acorns and begin exploding, splattering Haymitch's face with blood. End of chapter 20. That is so foul. Character analysis. Haymitch. He feels forever changed after taking out the careers, no matter the reason, that it was self-defense. And the games aren't over, so there's still plenty more opportunities for him to kill people. In the trilogy, we never see Haymitch in any combat situations. He trains for the 75th Games, but doesn't go in the arena, and during the war, he remains in hovercrafts and control rooms, overseeing those in the field, or just whenever Katniss is in the field. He's not necessarily too old, but he's in bad physical shape from his substance use. Even if he was in better health, I don't think Haymitch wanted to be in combat at all. Yes, he's very committed to the cause, but he has an aversion to battle, and I figure it stems from his own relationship to the games. He's not like Joanna or Finnick or the victors who took on commander roles like Lime from District 2. Haymitch's direct involvement with the war was basically all about managing Katniss. Maybe he was ordered to stay out of combat to do this job, but I wonder wonder if he was asked to run around with her in District 8 and all that, and he refused since he didn't want to be faced with killing anyone. What do you think? Once he's with Maisley, he's able to joke around a little, which is nice, shows he's not totally broken. Also really sweet how he made sure she gets the last mouthful of the juice. I'm so glad that we get this strictly platonic friendship between these two. It would have been so annoying if there was a romance thing. On to Maisley. Where the hell have you been, Loca? I missed you. The amount of Twilight quotes living in my head is a problem. The way Maisley looks emotionless as she watches Panache expire is likely an act and a subconscious defense mechanism. When something traumatic happens, your brain can suppress your emotions to cope, so I think that's what happens here with Maisley. Plus, she's trying to come off tough for the cameras. I love how smart she is for putting together the blow darts. Despite Haymitch ditching the newcomer alliance, Maisley still trusted him. She easily could have sent a dart his way too, but instead she immediately proposes they work together. I do wonder though if she had any reservations about this. After Panache went down, Haymitch could have grabbed the sword and attacked her if he wanted to. I imagine she had a teeny tiny hesitation, like a sliver of doubt, but quickly squashed it. What do you think? I think her sharing principles come from her relationship with her twin sister. She and Marilee probably grew up splitting everything down the middle. Her insistence on sharing food equally with Haymitch could also come from wanting to avoid being in his debt. The idea of owing was big for Katniss and the people in the Seam in general. I imagine Maisley's owing ideology wasn't so much about survival struggles and more of a social control thing, like how she knows Lenore Dove's secret and holds on to it to keep her at her mercy. Also in this chapter, we see Maisley's outlook shift a bit around food. Before the game, she intentionally never ate breakfast, and now in the arena, she's a breakfast, lunch, and supper person. Never really knew what it was like to be hungry before. I mean, really hungry. It hurts, and it scares me. I think she's processing how privileged she was compared to so many people back in 12. Some new info about her also is that she is behind the creative recipes at the candy shop, like hot pepper cherry taffy and lavender suckers. Haymitch's mama was a big fan of the taffy. Maisley herself doesn't like candy that much since there's so many more interesting things to make. She and Peeta would have been an amazing duo in the kitchen. They could have had a whole restaurant. Symbols and themes. Broken goblet. I feel like there's some symbolic meaning here with the way Haymitch breaks the glass to use for the funnel. It starts as this unnecessarily decadent item sent from sponsors. Then he gives it to Maisley, who really appreciates its beauty and it lifts her spirits a bit. And now the glass is split into 3 pieces. There's the base, the bowl, and the hollow glass tube of the stem. Haymitch asked Maisley how attached she is to this glass, and she says, less attached than I am to water. So he moves forward with chopping off the stem to use for the water catcher. Maisley's weapon is this blowgun, which is also a tube. So it's cool that the glass is reduced to a tube now that Maisley is in the picture. Is that something? I'm not sure, but I like it. Overall, the way they break this luxurious capital drinking vessel so it can serve as a necessary functional object to procure water to drink does a good job of showcasing the difference between capital and district values and circumstances. I imagine the sponsor seeing him breaking the glass and clutching their pearls, kind of like a "that is mahogany" moment. Haymitch notes the jagged glass does a nice job of holding it in place in the tarp. So this imperfect looking broken glass, something typically thrown in the trash, is still very valuable. The jaggedness of it also could foreshadow it being used as a weapon, perhaps. This tube is also reminding me of the sponsor gifted spile for the 75th games, which is how Katniss and the gang could get fresh water out of the trees. Next is heart-shaped vial. This perfume bottle was a pendant on one of Maisley's many necklaces. I think she intentionally chose to wear this to the reaping since there could be some practical use with it if she was in the games. I doubt she anticipated using it to hold poison, but it could be something to store a bit of water in. Having a heart-shaped perfume bottle full of poison is very President Snow. He's Mr. Poison and gave Lucy Gray a makeup compact to fill with poison. So they're both pretty cosmetic vessels, ironically ironically filled with deadly toxins to be used as weapons in the Hunger Games. Plus, there's this perfume element to all of it. The makeup compact that belonged to Snow's mother held rose-scented powder. Then Snow ends up wearing those extra perfumed roses to cover up his mouth sores he got from drinking poison. It's like the whole arena, perfumed air and beautiful flowers disguising the dangers within. You could also say Snow's heart is poisoned. Even without the Snow connection, there's lovely irony of a heart-shaped bottle being full of deadly toxins. It's giving Tumblr 2012 indie sleaze Lana Del Rey. If you know what I'm talking about, I love you and I hope you're feeling better these days. A photo of a heart-shaped perfume bottle on a necklace would have done numbers. Touching on the Dove Gray rabbits again. So that rabbit that led Haymitch out of the maze last chapter did lead him to the careers, but it stopped him from setting off the ladybug mutts. He saw that rabbit when he's just about to grab his axe and chop at the hedge. So once again, the rabbits protected him. Where were you this time though? Lore and world building. Fallen Tribute recap. There's no new lore about this, but I want to talk about some things. This format of only showing the faces of who died that day makes keeping track of who was left so much more difficult for the tributes in the arena. And I figure that's intentional by the game makers. People watching at home have this whole produced show that keeps them informed, but for the tributes, they need to mentally keep track of the tally and make sure they see the recap. When Katniss was passed out from the tracker jackers, she missed the recaps and wouldn't know who died if Rue hadn't told her. It would be a lot easier on the tributes if each recap showed all of the fallen, but the game makers don't want to make things easier. It adds the extra terror of not knowing who's still out there and puts kids without allies at a greater disadvantage. Since careers are usually allied, it gives them another boost over the others. Breaking news, the Hunger Games aren't fair. Possible foreshadowing. Hammock hiding. Now that Maisie and Haymitch have 2 hammocks, they talk about sleeping in the trees since it feels safer and they won't have to keep watch, assuming they will hear any intruders. Since things going wrong is what Sunrise is all about, perhaps something happens when they're sleeping in the hammocks because they end up not hearing the intruders. Or maybe mutts or a career will be hidden in a tree and attack them. Series connections. First kills. Haymitch's thoughts after killing the tributes from 4 are similar to Katniss's thoughts after she killed Marvel. Yes, she'd already dropped the tracker jacker nest that killed Glimmer and the District 4 girl, but this was her first real deliberate victim. In Sunrise, Haymitch thinks, I take in the dead bodies around us, for the first time recognizing that I've killed someone, 2 someones, brutally. It was self-defense, no question, but I can never go back to 5 minutes ago. Having taken their lives in that way, it's undoable. When he sees their death announcements in the sky later, he thinks, seems like the first time I've ever looked at them. I feel sick thinking of their families. Self-defense, I know. Here's Katniss's narration about Marvel, and reminder, he's the one who killed Rue. I don't know why I should even care about the boy. Then I realize he was my first kill. The boy from District 1 was the first person I knew would die because of my actions. Numerous animals have lost their lives at my hands, but only one human. I hear Gale saying, how different can it be, really? Amazingly similar in execution, a bow pulled, an arrow shot. Entirely different in the aftermath. I killed a boy whose name I don't even know. Somewhere, his family is weeping for him. Katniss doesn't need to reassure herself that she was acting in self-defense like Haymitch, but they both think of the loved ones of those they've slain. Katniss is reckoning with the emotional difference of shooting an animal versus a person. Haymitch's thoughts here make me think of what he said to Katniss and Peeta in Catching Fire about the other Victor tributes. Remember, you're not in a ring full of trembling children anymore. These people are all experienced killers, no matter what shape they appear to be in. We see this type of thinking expressed by many victors, just how the games alter them. Poisonous weapons. Maisie's poisoned darts remind me of the poisoned ring Glimmer from 1 tried to sneak in as her token for the 74th games. Cinna told Katniss that when it was examined, the review board found that if you twisted the gemstone, a spike popped out. Poisoned one. She claimed she had no knowledge the ring transformed and there was no way to prove she did. Maybe Glimmer didn't know and her family had given it to her, or maybe her mentors gave it to her. We don't know, but I'm wondering if there's any intentional Sleeping Beauty links here with all of this. There's a lot of variations of this fairy tale, but generally, a princess pricks her finger on a spindle which traps her in sleep. A spindle is a spike, usually made of wood or metal, that's used for hand spinning thread. In the famous 1959 Disney adaptation of the story, the princess is blonde, like Glimmer and Maisie. So it's fun to think that the darts in the ring were a little nod to the poison spindle. What do you think? First aid. Maisie caring for Haymitch here echoes Katniss and Peeta's dynamic in the 74th games, also the battle at the Capitol when they're at Tigresses. Katniss and Maisie both cleaned their district partner's wounds. Maisie gave Haymitch stitches, and while Katniss never stitched up Peeta, she did stitch Gale's lizard mutt neck wound. Maisley's crafty fingers were able to make neat, even stitches, while Katniss managed a row of jagged sutures. And shout out to Maisley's burn cream in her first aid kit. Katniss's first gift in the arena, chosen by Haymitch, was also burn cream. Both Maisley and Katniss had high praise for this burn cream. Next is soup gifts. The first sponsor gift Haymitch sent Katniss and Peeta after they teamed up was a pot of hot broth, and Maisie and Haymitch also received soup the night they first teamed up. There's a bunch of mini parallels with the tributes teaming up from their own district again. Shopkeeper arena meals. The way Haymitch is pleasantly impressed with Maisley's improvised meal of rolls with nut butter and banana slices reminds me of a moment with Katniss and Peeta in the cave. He spread goat cheese on rolls with apple slices on top, crediting the idea with a goat cheese and apple tart made at the family bakery. When Haymitch praises Maisley's recipe, she says she comes up with innovative flavor combinations at the candy shop. Also, earlier in the book, when they were separated getting the initial prep, Haymitch and I assume the other tributes received a meal of nut butter sandwiches and a banana. This was the first time Haymitch ate a banana. It's possible Maisie figured out this combo went well together here in this moment, or maybe she had bananas before back home and knew it was good, but I like that they had nut butter and banana earlier in the book. I personally love peanut butter and banana on toast. It's amazing. Also, it's possible when Haymitch is a mentor, he was inspired by Maisie to send silverware and plates along with the food gifts to Katniss and Peeta. When he sent them a big meal in the cave, there was also cutlery, and Katniss saw this as a luxury. Berry mush. When Maisie mashes the berries into a juicy paste in a bowl for her poison darts, I thought again of Katniss and Peeta in the cave. There's 2 times where Katniss makes berry mush to feed fevered Peeta. The first time, it's normal berries, and the second time, it's berry mush plus sleep syrup to knock him out so she can go to the feast for his medicine. So she sort of poisons him. Poisoned foxes. I am not reaching with this one, so don't even start. There's a trio of dead fox mutts, fur as orange as sunset, who appear to have died eating poisonous eggs. This is a Foxface Nightlock reference. It's obscure, but it's there. Foxes. Foxface. Died from poison eggs. Died from poison berries. Sunset orange fur. Peeta's favorite color, and he's the one who accidentally killed Foxface. And Foxface is just the nickname Katniss came up for her because she couldn't remember her real name because she was sly like a fox and had red hair. Haymitch asks what those foxes were designed to do, and Maisie says, steal our food, probably. Foxface's whole thing was stealing food, and it's what killed her. This puts the egg in Easter egg. I know how this sounds, but it makes sense, and Suzanne did it on purpose. Argue with the wall. Notable quotes. Here's Haymitch's reasoning behind leaving Panache's sword. The idea of claiming Panache's sword stained with newcomer blood creeps me out. I'm not his heir, the new leader of the pack, nor do I want to present myself as such. The use of the word heir stands out to me since we're specifically talking about a sword, which is something passed down as an heirloom among warriors and kings and such. Panache represents the ultimate gladiator. He's a career from District 1, and he fought with a sword and shield. And Panache is part of a Victor family. He's like an heir to the throne of the Victors. He's related to Palladium Barker, who took the crown 4 years ago, according to Wyatt. He's following family tradition. Next quote, Haymitch is referring to Maisley's toughness when he thinks, Mama used to say you never really knew who'd swim in a flood. And this got me thinking about Annie Cresta. I've been meaning to talk about her since we know she faced a flood and an earthquake during her games as well. We know very little about Annie's games. Peeta just said Annie's the one who went mad when her district partner got beheaded, ran off by herself and hid, but an earthquake broke a dam and most of the arena got flooded. She won because she was the best swimmer. There's some popular fan theories floating around regarding Annie. One is that she was also involved in a rebel plot like Haymitch, and she did something very similar, which caused this flood and earthquake. Maybe she or a different tribute were given explosives to blow up this dam with the hopes to fully fully break the arena this time. It's possible. If it almost worked once, it makes sense to the rebels to rework it and try again later on. Or perhaps this was all planned by the game makers, sort of as a taunt to the rebels about the 50th game's plot. It's a little of an FU to them, I guess. I'm open to either possibility, but I lean more towards this being game maker driven. It just feels kind of lame if every victor we know was some sort of failed Mockingjay themselves. And it's also possible there was simply a real natural earthquake that broke the dam. What do you think? The second theory about Annie post-Sunrise is that she is a body double like Lulu, put in there pre-games, or replaced post-game since the real Annie died in the flood too. All of this theorizing stems from Annie having severe mental health issues. To be honest, I don't like this theory. I mean, what's more likely? Someone who went through a traumatic experience, developed mental health issues, or that someone has been a brainwashed imposter all along? It makes sense that Annie is the way she is. Makes sense for any of the victors to have issues. Plenty of them do. As Katniss spent more time with Annie, she sees her as less mad than unstable. She laughs at odd places in conversation or drops out of it distractedly. Those green eyes fixate on a point with such intensity that you find yourself trying to make out what she sees in the empty air. Sometimes, for no reason, she presses both her hands over her ears as if to block out a painful sound. The thing with the ears is what gives the most fuel to this theory, since Lulu had her audio implant and they'd give her loud noises and she'd clutch at her ear. I just like the idea of erasing Annie's mental illness just being like an understandable thing that exists. Auditory hallucinations exist. People can react to that by covering their ears. It doesn't take a tinfoil hat theory to explain why Annie behaves the way she does. I've also seen the theory that Annie isn't a body double, but was given an audio implant to make her behave more normally, and it just made things worse. It's possible. Annie is a fictional person, okay? But if we're going off the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria, her behaviors could be attributed to psychotic episodes associated with post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, and/or a variety of other diagnoses. Maybe she was neurodivergent before the games too. We really don't know Annie as a character that well, so take all of this speculation with a grain of salt. If Suzanne chooses to write more about her story, I'd love to read it. Overall, I'm not denying the possibility of these theories being accurate, so feel free to believe what you wish and let me know your thoughts. And I know whenever I talk about Annie, I get comments saying I look like her, and I take no offense to that, of course. Steph Dawson, the actress who plays her, is lovely. And yes, I have blue eyes and red hair and bangs, but I want to set the record straight that Annie doesn't look like that in the books. She's described as having dark brown hair and green eyes. So I don't look like book Annie, and whenever I see comments that I look like her, I have to stop myself from replying, thanks, but canonically, I do not. Book canon forever. No one cares about this. I need to stop talking. Moving on. I really liked the image this next quote painted. Maisie takes the glass, sniffs the bouquet like it's a fine wine, and takes a sip. Tears actually come to her eyes. A haunting quote up next. 38 of us dead. 39 if you count Lulu, 40 if you count Woodbine, just a smattering of us left. It doesn't seem real. Nothing here is real. Felt that. This exchange where Maisie comments about having ham hock soup when her grandma died, Haymitch responds, mine too. I don't list my dead. It's not a competition. It's not a death competition like the Hunger Games. All right, that is it for chapter 20 and part 7 of the Ultimate Sunrise on the Reaping deep dive. I hope you had a nice time listening to me rant and rave. Part 8 will be up in about 2 weeks. Again, if you have the means, I strongly encourage you to support food banks. They could always use more donations and volunteers. Resources are linked below. Shout out to my Patreon friends. Thank you so much for your support. I'm planning to do a Patreon exclusive full reaction video to the Hunger Games but better parody video soon, so stay tuned for that. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't already, subscribe for more Hunger Games analyses and do the thumbs up thing.